Yeah, I'm excited to be here and see all of your faces, or half of your faces at least. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. I'm here today to talk about anxiety and faith. I know not the most fun topics, but hopefully I can make it fun a little bit at least. And maybe relevant. So this is my daughter, Alethea. She is gathering rings quite gleefully, as you can see. I live in Calgary with my husband, Cody, who is a pastor at First Assembly Church. We live in downtown Beltline with our daughter. And I counsel youth, young adults, adults, pretty much a wide range of people, and I have a private practice, so appointment-based counseling here in the city. So I'm not sure if any of you have been to the mountains. I presume you have, because we live quite close. I see some nods. So I want you to use your imagination with me for just a little bit. I want you to imagine you're on a hiking trip in Banff. Close your eyes if it's more helpful to envision. You're with 3 of your closest friends, and one of them is a master hiker. They are great with directions. They know what's up. And so you're about halfway through the hike. No cell reception, or they've been left in the car. Don't need any of that. And you stop to tie your shoe. When you look up, the rest of the group is gone. I want you to think about what you would be feeling. And if anyone's comfortable, shout it out. Sad? Scared? Angry? Scared? Yeah, so here's what I would feel. Alarm. I'm not good with directions. I'm afraid of bears. Maybe some of you like bears, I don't know. And I'm not a big fan of being alone. I tend to like being around people. So another word for alarm is anxiety. And often anxiety comes with this question: what am I going to do? And often the anxiety is attached to not feeling like you have the answer to that question. So I wanted to start by talking about what anxiety is. You may not have heard it attached to the word alarm, but I'll get more into that and explain why I like that word. So often there's confusion around what to do with anxiety. Most of you, I'm sure, know when you feel it. Sometimes it's a tense feeling in the pit of your stomach. Sometimes it's a lot of tenseness in your shoulders, your neck. Sometimes just a sick feeling. Other times it might be more around your emotions. You might want to cry, you might want to scream, you might want to hide. All of those are pretty natural responses to anxiety. So essentially, anxiety is alarm. So just like a fire alarm goes off to let you know that a pizza is burning. I really like pizza, hence pizza. And it gets your attention. It's loud, it's annoying. Recently, our fire alarm went off at 2 a.m. I had to go and get my daughter. It was minus 20 outside, and we had to go down 7 flights of stairs with her in a bassinet, bundled up, wait outside for the fire department. Not fun. It was not a pizza that someone burnt, but it was water that they had left on their stove. So whether you've experienced a fire alarm going off or not, I think you know what it indicates. And your goal is to find the source of the fire. Or in our case, just get out of the building as fast as we can and allow the fire department to find out the source of the fire. And then ideally to put out the fire, whether that's us or someone else. And your response to anxiety actually isn't much different than that. It's telling you something. It's telling you something's wrong, or you feel something like really negative, or you feel threatened, unsafe, without direction in the case of hiking alone, Your friends have left you. Yes, I too would be very angry if my friends just abandoned me on a hike. So your job is just to figure out what it's telling you. And that can be anxiety-inducing in and of itself to know where to start. But hopefully, as we go along, I'll be able to bring some light to that for you guys. So before I talk about the other deeper things anxiety could be telling you and what you can do about it, I want to start with the idea of making sure the fire alarm is not malfunctioning. So whether it's a low battery, or if you've ever had a really steamy bathroom and opened the door and the fire alarm's gone off, or maybe there's smoke and the fire alarm goes off but there's no fire, sometimes our anxiety alarm goes off and there's no fire. But the way that it's different is that it's just telling us that your basic needs aren't being met. And so I would encourage you to start there, and I'll explain what I mean. There are 5 basic needs that I want you to think about. So if you wake up in the morning and you feel, your stomach's gonna drop out of you, and you're feeling tense, you feel sick, you definitely don't wanna go anywhere, I would encourage you to start here, which is with the first basic need, which is survival. And so what you want to ask yourself is, how did I sleep last night? And with a 7-month-old, it's usually the answer is not well. So sometimes we wake up with anxiety because maybe we didn't sleep well, maybe we were up till 2 a.m. texting our friends, and are getting up at 6 a.m. the next morning to get ready for school. Usually, we need sleep to recover. So sometimes that can kind of clue us in to why anxiety's there. It's just letting us know we didn't get enough sleep. Other times, it has something to do with food, eating, or exercise. Or it could also have to do with substances. So if you were, whether it's prescribed medication or unprescribed medication, or drinks, anything like that, sometimes that can affect anxiety. It can affect how our body feels, and therefore there's a little bit of alarm. So the next one is belonging. So this has to do with even stuff like this, is we all have a need for community, for connection, for people to be a part of something. And sometimes, especially with COVID, that's really been impacted. When you're not allowed to see friends, when you're not allowed to go out, or your only connecting points are by text or phone or FaceTime, it's a little bit different. And we actually we kind of miss feeling as connected. So sometimes that's also what anxiety is telling us, is that we're feeling disconnected from people and disconnected from meaning and community. And the third is purpose. So not disconnected from community, but it's this idea that we all need meaning and purpose. And whether it's achievement or skills or just a sense of self-worth, again, COVID's kind of impacted some of those things. If, for example, there's a sport that you're super good at and you really enjoy, maybe some of your purpose comes from that, and for a season you haven't been able to do that. Or maybe your purpose comes from math tests, I don't know. And some of those tests are maybe non-existent because classes shifted to online. And so some of that purpose is missing as well. Or maybe it's volunteering. And again, those activities, a lot of them have been shut down. And so whatever it is, we all have this need for purpose. And so sometimes that's an indication that that's not taking place or unmet. The fourth is freedom. So the need to have some independence, to make some choices, and to maybe have an idea of where life is going. Again, COVID has impacted that. We have less choices. We have to be masked indoors. And we have a fear around health and safety. And so that influences freedom. But beyond that, sometimes, we want to make choices, but we have limitations. Maybe we don't have a phone. Maybe we don't have a car. Maybe our parents have set up rules and boundaries that we have to follow. And so sometimes the anxiety is just telling us that we don't like those things. And sometimes it's not that we can do anything about it, or there's maybe the potential for having conversation with maybe the right people if they have like more authority in that area. If you're really yearning for freedom and want to make more decisions, maybe that's a conversation to have with your parents. Or if you want more opportunities, maybe that's a conversation for someone else as well. And the last one is fun. So all of these things are important, but we also need to be able to relax, to laugh, to enjoy life. And sometimes that's hard, with stress, with busyness, with sickness, with limitations. And so sometimes anxiety is telling us that we need to find a way to relax and enjoy life a little. So if you've gone through all of those things, you're sleeping well, you're eating well, you're exercising, you're so connected to your friends, you have that activity that you love, you are making choices, and you're having the most fun in your life, then you can go towards these things. And obviously I'm speaking with a little bit of sarcasm because it's really hard to check off all those boxes all of the time. So you've gone through each of these, acted on them, your alarm is still going off, but you know the battery's working, or at least at 50%. Then you can, I drew this for you. So the idea is that alarm or anxiety comes in, and again, it's still telling you something, and you have 3 options. You've gone through your basic needs, maybe there's nothing else you can change there. So you have these 3 options. The first is caution. So often the alarm is going off because our sense of safety or a fear we have. And our fears are often just an indication of something we care about. I wouldn't have anxiety around seeing people if I didn't care about people and want to spend time with people and really want to be connected to people. And I wouldn't have anxiety or fear, or my alarm wouldn't be going off if I didn't want to feel safe. And I had been in a situation where I felt unsafe. So with the first option of caution, an example maybe is if you've ever had a friend or friends or a group of people that are maybe not really friends, and maybe they were mean, maybe there was like a little bit of bullying happening, and your anxiety alarm's going off because that doesn't feel good. It impacts belonging, and it impacts your sense of safety. Caution might be the outlet. So what that looks like is caution moving forward in relationships. Anxiety might be strong, and you might interpret that as, I'm never having any more friends, I'm never confiding in anyone again, I don't want to put myself out there. And that would be totally natural to feel, but caution would be a better option to consider, kind of gradually entering into friendships, seeing if they're reliable people, and then building those relationships. So adaptation, or considering your alternatives, is the second option. So often we have to meet disappointment with this one. It might be being let down, being given a task or something that you really don't want to do. Maybe some of you don't like presentations or getting called on in class. I've heard from some of my teenage clients that that's not something they're really a fan of. So if any of you resonate with that, this might be your outlet. Just like disappointment that you can't get out of it. But there are alternatives to consider or adapting to do. You can prepare for that presentation. You can talk to your teacher. You can practice with your friends. You can practice with your parents. You can write it out. There are things to consider that you can do that acknowledges that anxiety is there, it's telling you something, and you're not without alternatives. And the last one is courage. So this is, I think, applicable to even more situations, is that sometimes caution doesn't work. Sometimes there aren't alternatives to consider. And so we need courage, which is having mixed feelings. Courage is having fear and maybe excitement, having nervousness and maybe a little hope. And that might be at school again, or just around people that maybe have different ideas and perspectives than you. Maybe it has to do with you going to youth group or believing in God, and you have a little bit of anxiety about what your friends might think about that. And maybe caution isn't really working. There aren't a lot of alternatives, so maybe it's courage. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's uncertainty, and a little bit of hope that maybe there's the potential of sharing those views and having them respected by your friends or peers. Now you might be thinking, how does this connect to faith? She hasn't mentioned that yet. Or another question I've heard asked is anxiety a lack of trust in God? Well, God designed us with emotions, and often we will have mixed feelings about situations or experiences, and we'll need to access that courage. God doesn't promise a lack of trouble or trials, but he does say he'll be with us. So I wanted to read this psalm to you. If you have a Bible or device, and you may not know this, but the Bible's actually available in print. I know, crazy. So it says this: God is our strong refuge. He is truly our helper in times of trouble. For this reason, we do not fear when the earth shakes and the mountains tumble into the depths of the sea, when its waves crash and foam and the mountains shake before the surging sea. The river's channels bring joy to the city of God, the special holy dwelling place of the Most High. God lives within it, it cannot be moved. God rescues it at the break of dawn. Nations are in uproar, kingdoms are overthrown. God gives a shout, the earth dissolves. The Lord of heaven's armies is on our side. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Come, witness the exploits of the Lord, who brings devastation to the earth. He brings an end to wars throughout the earth. He shatters the bow and breaks the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, "Stop your striving and recognize that I am God. I will be exalted over the nations. I will be exalted over the earth. The Lord of heaven's armies is on our side. The God of Jacob is our stronghold." So there are a few things that stand out to me about this. One is that it starts with reassurance. God is reachable during difficult times. Our feelings can suggest that because we don't feel God's presence, that he's not there. But this psalm suggests that he can be reached. The second is it doesn't mention that we won't experience hard times or that bad things won't happen. There are many difficult circumstances mentioned by the psalmist that don't disappear, even in trusting God. But the psalm does say that God is present with us when these things happen. And the psalmist does not say that we won't feel fear. So multiple times the psalmist writes, God is on our side. Often when we see all these things happen, fear creeps in. And that's really the way anxiety is supposed to function. It lets us know that we feel unsafe or threatened. And God isn't asking us to come to him without our anxiety. Nor is he promising a lack of difficult circumstances. But his presence is there, even if anxiety is there too. He wants us to come to him honestly, with mixed feelings or anxiety or any other feelings we experience. And that's why I love the Psalms. I think often they're a great example of how to pray. One of my favorite Psalms is, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? Will I take sorrow in my heart all day long? And I love it because it's so honest. And that's sometimes how we feel. And sometimes the Psalms turn. Like in this one, it ends with, "But I will trust in your unfailing love." But not always. Sometimes it's just sorrow and pain and anxiety and frustration, but crying out to God because there's the promise of his presence. So it's an emotion we feel. And it tunes us into something we might be missing. A basic need, something we could be afraid of or disappointed by, or some external circumstance that we don't have any control over. It's frustrating and hard and anxiety-inducing. And we can pay attention to this and make some changes, take an exit, caution, adaptation, or courage, and remind ourselves where God is in the midst of what we're facing, even if the situation doesn't change and we still feel anxious. And sometimes, too, accessing supports like counselors like myself, your youth leaders, reaching out to them for support. Again, because belonging is a big thing, you're not supposed to go through this alone. In fact, it can make things worse and more challenging if you try to. One of the other things that I understand in connection with God is that he created us for community, connection, purpose, belonging. And so we're supposed to do life together. And so that's another opportunity. God is with us, and we are here for each other. And you have people you can reach out to for support, and professionals too that are there as well. Because although these are ways to respond to anxiety, there are also other factors at play too that I just don't have time to go into today, but we'll go into a little bit tomorrow if you come, and maybe answer some of your questions then too. That being said, you can pass those along to your youth leaders if you're unsure of how to pass along those questions. But it's okay to experience anxiety. God is with you, and there are things to consider, and in some sense, answers to your anxiety, reasons for experiencing that. So I have this prayer. Some of you may have heard it before. It's called the prayer for serenity. It's often used in treatment with addictions, recovering, but it's a really good acknowledgement of anxiety and what we can and can't do. And so I want you to, it's on the screen. I'm going to pray it over you guys right now. And then I just want you to spend maybe 30 seconds before we go into small groups and just think about it. Maybe read it a couple times on the screen and just sit with those words as a reassurance and hope. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Lord, I pray these words over these youth and young adults, that you would help them to discern what things they can actually change and how to go about that well. That you will help them to access the courage to have mixed feelings and to be okay with it. Courage to change the things that they can. And again, to do that with people's help and your help. And the wisdom to know when there are things that they can change and when there are things that they cannot. And I ask this in your name, Jesus.